नमस्ते एवरीवन, बोलिए सत्य सनातन वैदिक धर्म की जय। क्या हाल चाल आप सबके, कैसी चल रही है आपकी ज़िंदगी। आई एम बैक विद 7 to 8 क्लास। ये रोज़ होती है एंड मैं नहीं चाहता हूँ ये कभी स्टॉप हो। एंड जब ट्रैवलिंग होगी तब देखा जाएगा तब कैसे मैनेज करना है। ट्रैवलिंग में एक्चुअली नेटवर्क इश्यूज भी होते हैं, बट या नेवरदलेस अब हम अनिर्वाच्यवाद एंड द वेदांता डायलेक्ट के बारे में बात करेंगे, विच इज़ अ बिग टॉपिक, और हम इसे जल्दी से फिनिश करने की कोशिश ज़रूर करते हैं। We have already seen that the indefinite ajnana could be experienced in direct perception, and according to Vedanta, there are only two categories: the category of the real, the self luminous Brahman, and the category of the indefinite. यानी कि यहाँ तो हमें अपने बारे में अज्ञान है, या फिर इनडेफिनेट, या फिर किसी और चीज़ के बारे में अज्ञान है विच इज़ नॉट डेफिनेट। द लैटर हैज़ फॉर इट्स ग्राउंड द वर्ल्ड अपेयरेंस। जो इनडेफिनेट है उसकी वर्ल्ड अपेयरेंस है, राइट, एंड इज द प्रिंसिपल बाय विच द वन अनचेंजेबल ब्राह्मण इज फॉर्सली मैनिफेस्टेड इन ऑल द डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ द मैनीफोल्ड वर्ल्ड। एंड इसी के बेसिस पे ब्राह्मण, जिसे हम भगवान कहते हैं या फिर जिसे हम आत्मन कहते हैं, वो फॉल्सली मैनिफेस्ट होता है, राइट। बट दिस इनडेफिनिट which is different from the category of the positive and the negative has only a relative existence and will ultimately vanish when the true knowledge of Brahman dawns. Nothing, however, can be known about the nature of indefinite except its character as indefinite. That all the phenomena of the world, the fixed order of events, the infinite variety of world forms and names, all these are originated by this avidya, ajnana, maya, is indeed hardly comprehensible. ये सारे जितने भी फिनोमेना ऑफ द वर्ल्ड है, द फिक्स्ड ऑर्डर ऑफ इवेंट्स, के हर इवेंट एक टाइम पे ही होगा। जैसे हम कहते हैं ना कि विधि के विधान को कौन बदल सकता है, और जब जो होना है वही तभी होना है, राइट। तो उसी की बात की गई है, राइट। If it is indefinite nescience, how can all these well-defined forms of world existence come out of it? It is said to exist only relatively and to have only a temporary existence beside the permanent infinite reality. To take such a principle and to derive from it the mind, matter, and indeed everything else except the pure luminous Brahman would hardly appeal to our reason. If this system of world order were only seeming appearance, if no other element of truth in it except pure being, then it would be indefensible in the light of reason. It has been proved that whatever notion we have about the objective world are all self-contradictory and thus groundless and false. If they have all proceeded from the indefinite, they must show this character when exposed to discerning criticism. All categories have to be shown to be so hopelessly confused and to be without any conceivable notion that though apparent before us, yet they crumble into indefiniteness as soon as they are examined. And one cannot make any such assertion about them as that they are or that they are not. Such negative criticisms of our fundamental notions about the world order are undertaken by Sriharsha and his commentary and the follower Chitsukha. It is impossible within the limits of this chapter to give the complete account of their criticisms of our various notions of reality. I shall give here only one example. तो इसमें सिर्फ एक एग्जाम्पल दिया गया है जिसमें वो क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं, राइट। Let us take the examination of the notion of difference bheda from khandya. Four examinations are possible of the notion of difference. 1. The difference may be perceived as appearing in its own characteristics in our experience, Swarupa Bheda, as Prabhakar thinks. जो डिफरेंस है may be perceived as appearing in its own characteristics, right? In our experience swarup bheda, as Prabhakar thinks, the difference between the two things are nothing but the absence of one in the other, anya anyonya bhava, are some Nayikas and Bhattas think. Difference means divergence of characteristics Vedharma, as the Vaisheshikas speak of it. Difference means diversion of characteristics Vedharma, यानी कि characteristics थोड़ा सा आप different कर रहे हो. As the Vaisheshika speaks of it, difference may be a separate quality in itself, like the prathiktva quality of न्याय. डिफरेंस एक सेपरेट क्वालिटी हो सकती है कि ये चीज़ दूसरे से इस तरीके से डिफरेंट है जिसे पृथक्त्व बोला जाता है न्याय में. Taking the first alternative, we see that it is said that the jug and the cloth represent in them by their very form and existence their mutual difference from each other. But if by perceiving the cloth we perceive only its difference from the jug as the characteristic of the cloth, then the jug also must have penetrated into the form of the cloth. Otherwise, how could we perceive in the cloth its characteristics as the difference from the jug? That is, if difference is a thing which can be directly perceived by the senses, then as difference would naturally mean difference from something else, it is expected that something else such as jug etc., from which the difference is perceived, must also be perceived directly in the perception of the cloth. But if the perception of difference between two things has penetrated together in the same identical perception, then the same contradiction becomes apparent. Difference as an entity is not what we perceive in the cloth, for difference means difference from something else. And if that thing from which the difference is perceived is not perceived, then how can the difference as an entity be perceived? If it is said that the cloth itself represents its difference from the jug and that this is indicated by the jug, then we may ask, what is the nature of the jug? थोड़ा सा इसे ध्यान देने की कोशिश करते हैं. 4 एक्सप्लेनेशंस पहले दिए गए थे कि द डिफरेंस मे बी परसीव बाय अपीयरेंस इन इट्स ओन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स इन आर एक्सपीरियंस. स्वरूप भेदा प्रभाकर का ये मानना है. स्वरूप भेदा जैसे कोई काला है कोई गोरा है, अब अंदर से क्या है किसी को नहीं पता, बट इन द सेंस ऑफ मेकिंग द डिफरेंशिएशन, काला है या गोरा है ये हम डिफरेंशिएट तो करते हैं देखने में, राइट? तो ये स्वरूप भेदा होता है. दूसरा डिफरेंस बताया था, डिफरेंस बिटवीन टू थिंग्स इज नथिंग बट द एब्सेंस ऑफ वन इन द अदर, अन्यान्यो भाव, एज सम नायिकास एंड भट्टास थिंक. जैसे किसी एक फ़ोन में कैमरा है, किसी एक फ़ोन में कैमरा नहीं है, तो हम उस पूरे फ़ोन को उसमें नहीं देख पाते हैं, राइट? तो दिस इज समथिंग अन्यान्यो भाव इज नथिंग बट द एब्सेंस ऑफ वन और द अदर, यानी कि इन दोनों चीज़ में एब्सेंस है, राइट? दिस इज अन्योन्यो भाव. डिफरेंस मीन्स डाइवर्जेंस ऑफ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स वैधर्मा. डाइवर्जेंस ऑफ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, जैसे एक की उंगली छोटी है एक की वही उंगली बड़ी है तो डाइवर्ज हो रहा है कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, राइट? एंड डिफरेंस मे बी सेपरेट क्वालिटी इन इटसेल्फ, लाइक द पृथक्त्व क्वालिटी ऑफ न्याय. जैसे पृथक हो जाता है, इट इज अ पृथक्त्व क्वालिटी ऑफ न्याय. But if by perceiving cloth we perceive only its difference from the jug as the characteristic of the cloth, then the jug must also have penetrated into the form of cloth. Otherwise, how could we perceive the cloth its characteristics as a difference from jug? तो कहते हैं अगर आप क्लॉथ और जग को से फॉर्म के फैक्टर में ही चेंज देखते हो तो जग भी कभी क्लॉथ के फॉर्म में रहा होगा, ऐसा है क्या? नहीं. If difference is the thing which can be directly perceived by the senses, then as difference would naturally mean difference from something else, it is expected that something else such as jug etc., from which the difference is perceived, must also be perceived directly in the perception of the cloth. But if the perception of difference between two things has penetrated together in the same identical perception, then the self contradiction becomes apparent. तो self contradiction apparent हो जाता है. Difference as an entity is not what we perceive in the cloth. For difference means difference from something else. And if that thing from which the difference is perceived is not perceived, then how can the difference as an entity be perceived? If it is said that cloth itself represents its difference from the jug, and that this is indicated by the jug, then we may ask, what is the nature of the jug? If the difference from the cloth be the very nature of the jug, then the cloth itself is also involved in the nature of jug. It is if it is said that the jug only indicates that it is a term from which difference is intended to be conveyed, then that also becomes impossible. And how can we imagine that there is a term which is independent of any association of its difference from other things and is yet a term which establishes the notion of difference? अगर कोई एक टर्म है जो एक डिफरेंस क्रिएट कर रहा है एंड द सेम टर्म इज एक्चुअली एस्टैब्लिशिंग द नोशन ऑफ डिफरेंस कि ये डिफरेंस है दोनों में, if it is a term of difference, it cannot be independent of its relationship with other thing from which it is differentiated. अगर कोई टर्म एक चीज़ को डिफरेंशिएट कर रहा है, जैसे दिस इज़ अ कैमरा फ़ोन, दिस इज़ अ स्मार्टफोन और दिस इज़ अ बटन डम फ़ोन, तो ये सारी चीज़ें एक दूसरे को डिफरेंशिएट कर रहे हैं, राइट? जब ये एक दूसरे को इन सब चीज़ों के बेसिस पे डिफरेंशिएट कर ही देते हैं इन दैट वेरी पर्टिकुलर सेंस, अगर आप देखें तो वो उससे रिलेटेड है. इफ इट्स डिफरेंस फ्रॉम द क्लॉथ इज द क्वालिटी ऑफ जग, then also the all difficulty comes in from its difference from the cloth would involve the cloth also in itself. And if the cloth is involved in nature of the jug as its quality, then by the same manner the jug would also be the character of the cloth, and hence not difference but identity results. Moreover, if a cloth is perceived as a character of the jug, the two will appear to be hanging one over the other, but this is never so experienced by us. Moreover, it is difficult to ascertain if qualities have any relation with things. If they have not, then absence of relation being the same everywhere, everything might be the quality of everything. If there is a relation between these two, then that relation would require any another relation to relate itself with the relation, and that would again require another relation with another, and so on. Again, it may be said that when the jug etc. are seen without reference of the other thing, they appear as jug etc. But when they are viewed with reference to cloth etc., they appear as difference. But this cannot be so, for the perception as jug is entirely different from the perception of difference. It should also be noted that the notion of difference is also different from the notion of both the jug and the cloth. It is one thing to say that there are jug and cloth, and quite another thing to say that jug is different from the cloth. Thus, a jug cannot appear as difference, though it may be viewed with reference to cloth. The notion of jug does not require the notion of other things for its manifestation. Moreover, when I say the jug is different from the cloth, I never mean that difference is an entity which is the same as the jug or the cloth. And what I mean is that the difference of the cloth from the jug has its limits in the jug, and not merely that the notion of cloth has a reference to jug. This shows that difference cannot be characteristic nature of the things perceived. Again, in second alternative, where differences of two things is defined as absence of each other in the other, we find that if difference in jug and cloth means that the jug is not in the cloth and that cloth is not in jug, then also the same difficulty arises. For when I say that the absence or negation of jug in the cloth is its difference from the jug, then also The residence of the absence of jug in the cloth would require that the jug also resides in the cloth, and this would reduce difference to identity. If it is said that the absence of jug in the cloth is not a separate thing but is rather the identical cloth itself, then also their difference as mutual exclusion cannot be explained. If this mutual negation anyanubhava is explained as the mere absence of jugness in the cloth and the clothness in the jug, then also difficulty arises, for there is no such quality in jugness or clothness that they may be mutually excluded, and there is no such quality in them that they can be treated as identical. And so, when it is said that there is no jugness in cloth, we might as well say that there is no clothness in jug. For clothness and jugness are one and the same, and hence absence of jugness in the cloth would amount to the absence of clothness in the cloth, which is self contradictory. Taking again the third alternative, we see that if difference means divergence of characteristics with Vaidharma, then the question arises whether the Vaidharma or divergence as existence in jug, as such a divergence can distinguish it from the divergence existing in the cloth. If the answer is in the affirmative, then we require a series of endless Vaidharmyas progressing ad infinitum. एड इन्फिनिटम मतलब जब हम पहले कह रहे थे कि एक चीज़ से दूसरी चीज़ कनेक्ट होती ही जा रही है, एंड अगेन दिस इज नॉट लीडिंग टू एनी पर्टिकुलर रिजल्ट. If the answer is in the negative, then there being no divergence between the two divergences, they become identical, and hence divergence of characteristics is as such ceases to exist. If it is said that natural forms of things are difference in themselves, for each of them excludes the other, then apart from the differences, the natural forms the things are reduced to formlessness. Neshwarupata. If natural forms, Swarupa means special natural forms, Swarupa Vishesha, then as the special natural forms or characteristics also only represent difference, the natural forms of the things as apart from the special ones would appear to be identical. So also it may be proved that there is no such quality of as prithaktva, separateness, which can explain differences of things. For there also the question would arise as to whether separateness exists in different things and similar ones, or whether separateness is identical with the thing in which it exists or not, and so forth. The earliest beginning of this method of subtle analysis and the dialectic in Indian philosophy are found in the opening chapters of the Kathavathu. In the great Mahabhashya on Panini by Patanjali, we also find some traces of it. But Nagarjuna was the man who took it up in right earnest and systematically cultivated it in all its subtle and abstruse issues and counter issues in order to prove that everything that appeared as a fixed order or system was non-existent, for all were unspeakable, indescribable and self-contradictory, and thus everything being discarded, there was only the void, shunya. Shankara partially utilized this method in his refutation of Nyaya and Buddhist systems, but Sri Harsha again revived and developed it in a striking manner, and after having criticized the most important notion and concepts of our everyday life, which are often backed by the Nyaya system, sought to prove that nothing in the world can be defined and that we cannot ascertain whether a thing is or is not. The refutations of all possible definitions that Nyaya could give necessary led to the conclusion that the things sought to be defined did not exist, though they appear to do so. The Vedantic contentions was that this is exactly as it should be. For the indefinite ajnana produces only appearance, which when exposed to reason show that no consistent notion of them can be formed. Or in other words, the word appearance, the phenomena of maya and ajnana are indefinable or anirvachanya. The great work of Sri Harsha was found by Tattva Deepika of Chitsukha, in which he generally followed Sri Harsha and sometimes supplemented him with the addition of criticism of certain new concepts. The method of Vedanta thus followed only one side of method of Shunyavada in annulling all the concepts of world appearing, and on other Vijnanvada Buddhism is proving the self illuminating character of knowledge and ultimately establishing the self as the only self luminous ultimate reality. ये पढ़ा है क्या? कवर करना चाहिए या नहीं कर सकते हैं. द थ्योरी ऑफ कॉजेशन भी हम कवर कर लेते हैं. The Vedanta philosophy looked at the constantly changing phenomena of the world appearance and sought to discover the root whence proceeded the endless series of events and effects. उन्होंने, क्योंकि this world is kaleidoscopic, it is ever changing, so they were saying that they have to look at the root of that. The theory that effects were altogether new productions caused by the invariable, unconditional and immediately preceding antecedents, as well as theory that it was the cause which involved and by its transformation produced the effect, are considered insufficient to explain the problem which the Vedanta had before it. Certain collocations invariably and unconditionally preceded certain effects. But this cannot explain how the previous set of phenomena could be regarded as producing the succeeding set. In fact, the concept of causation and production had in it something quite undefinable and inexplicable. Our inquiry after the cause is an inquiry after more fundamental and primary form of truth of a thing, that what appears at the present moment when we wish to know what was the cause of the jug. What we sought was a simpler form, and which the effect was only a more complex form of manifestation. What is the ground, the root out of which the effect has come forth? If apart from such an inquiry we take the pictorial representation of the causal phenomena, in which some collocations being invariable present at any antecedent point of time, the effect springs forth into being, we find that we are just where we were before, and are unable to penetrate into the logic of the affair. The Nyaya definition of cause and effect may be of the use of in a general way in an associating certain groups and things of a particular kind of certain other phenomena happening at a succeeding moment, as being relevant pairs of which one being represent the other also has a probability of being present, but can do nothing more than this. It does not answer our question as to the nature of cause. Antecedence in time is regarded in this view as an indispensable condition for the cause. But time, according to Nyaya, is one continuous entity. Succession of time can only be conceived as antecedents and consequence of phenomena, and these again involve succession. Thus the notion of succession of time and the antecedents and the consequence of time being mutually dependent upon each other, Anyanyashraya, neither of these can be conceived independently. Another important condition is invariable, but what does not mean? If it means invariable antecedents, then even an as which is invariably present as an antecedent to the smoke rising from the washerman's house must be regarded as the cause of smoke. Ashes are used in carrying soiled linen in India. Ashes are always present when water is boiled for washing the laundry. ठीक है. If it means such an antecedent as contributes to the happening of the effect, it becomes again difficult to understand anything about the contributing to the effect. For the only intelligible thing is the antecedents and nothing more. If invariability means the existence of of that at the presence of which the effect comes into being, then also it fails, for there may be the seed about no but no shoot. मतलब कि बीज तो होगा लेकिन उसकी ब्रांचेस नहीं होंगी, राइट. For the mere presence of the seed will not suffice to produce the effect of the shoot. If it is said that a cause can produce an effect only when it is associated with its necessary factor, then also the question remains the same, for we have not understood what is meant for by cause, right. Again, when the same effect is often seen to be produced by the pluralities of causes, the cause cannot be defined as that which happening the effect happens and failing the effect fails. इसे हम अभी तक यहीं पे रोकेंगे. इसमें बस ये कहना चाह रहे हैं कि एक इफेक्ट के कई कॉजेज हो सकते हैं. जैसे धुआं उठ रहा है तो धुआं तो पानी जो कपड़े धो रहा है वहाँ से भी उठ सकता है, ऐसा तो है नहीं वहाँ से नहीं उठ सकता. तो अगर वहाँ से उठ रहा है तो उसका सोर्स अलग है, उसका सोर्स अलग तो उसकी रिक्वायरमेंट्स अलग है. तो हम कॉज एंड इफेक्ट को एज अ सब्सटेंस एज एन बेसिक चीज़ नहीं देख सकते. हम इसी चीज़ को टाइप्स ऑफ कॉजेशन को आगे कंटिन्यू करेंगे. इट्स प्रीटी बिग. प्रॉबेबली आई माइट रिपीट इट. मैं इसे रिपीट कर लेता हूँ कल के लाइव में. कल नहीं, अब कल लाइव नहीं होगा, इट विल बी लाइव ऑन फ्राइडे. तो वेडनेसडे थर्सडे जो होगा हमारी छुट्टियां हैं एंड उन छुट्टियों में भगवत का होगा लाइव. आई होप यू लाइक दिस शॉर्ट वीडियो. शॉर्ट में ही मैं रखना चाहता हूँ कुछ दिनों तक, एंड देन उसके बाद हम बड़े लाइव्स पे कंटिन्यू करेंगे. जय श्री राम.